Well, I hope you liked that opening sequence. That was my little dramatization to say that the main line is complete after these months of promising you all that I would have it done, hopefully by the end of this summer. It's now complete. I have the loop of mainline track going around the layout, and it's all been wired in and checked, and I've been very busy these last few months, and so I've got a lot of progress to report. The main line being the number one thing. I've also been very busy on some other things right now. Just to put in a plug, I'm very active with Veterans for American Ideals, and our primary mission is ensuring that Afghan and Iraqi and Kurdish translators and interpreters that supported our forces are given safe haven here in the United States as they were promised. And there are still, as you may have heard on the news, approximately 18,000 Afghans who supported ours and NATO forces remaining in Afghanistan, and we promised sanctuary to them, special immigrant visas, and they and their families, a total of about 70,000 people, are depending on us to evacuate them. And I've been very active in trying to bring attention to that issue. Obviously it's taken away time from other things. My model railroad is something I do for me, but this is more important. And just to put in a plug, if you haven't and you're disposed to, I would encourage you to contact your congressmen, members of Congress, senators, representatives, and the White House to voice your support for honoring the promise that our country made to these people, because we promise our people and people who work for us that we will not leave them behind. And this is a really important issue. So that's my commercial for today. Like I say, I hope you enjoyed that opening sequence. That was a loop all the way around the visible portion of the main line by my Union Pacific excursion train pulled by number 844, the living legend, as I explained in a previous episode. And the cars behind her are all painted and complete and everything, but there's some decaling yet to be done on them, but they all represent cars that are in Union Pacific's current heritage fleet that they use with their excursion with their two steam locomotives, 4014 and 844, and their E9 diesels that they use, the Streamliner diesels. And again, I showed them on a prior episode. And also some of the fun you can have. We actually staged a meet here between 844, the excursion train, and a freight coming in the opposite direction into the town of Karlsbad here that you see that I've been working on. And that just demonstrates some of the fun you can have with model railroading, because the whole objective here is to recreate a real railroad and the way it operates and everything. And it's really neat to be able to do that. And digital command control adds a lot to that you can operate trains independently on the same piece of track the way that they really would work in the real world. To get there, as I said, I had to do a lot of construction. I had to put in all this sub-road bed here, figure my track centerline layout, put in the road bed, ballast the sides of it, mount in the track itself, do all the wiring, install switch machines, the tortoise slow motion switch machines that I showed in the prior episode. That was a lot of work. That's why I haven't been posting an episode here for a couple of months, because I wanted to get this done. And then building the last bit of spline road bed to connect the west end of Karlsbad with the east end of Warrenville. And so now I can do a complete circuit of the layout. In the process of doing that, there's always going to be gremlins with wiring. And this section right here just about drove me crazy for about a week. There was an electrical problem in here that was causing a dead short, which is an issue with digital command control or any electrical power system. And in sorting that all out, and this is where you have to be very patient. You have to go with continuity checks. You just have to take your time and eliminate possible causes one at a time. And ultimately, it all came down to a defect right here in this switch. There is a power continuity strip to power the frog of the switch that was breaking insulation into one of the running rails. And it took me the better part of a week with my continuity tester and a lot of frustration to find this. And then once I get this sorted out, this was the electrical gremlin needed to be fixed, and then I had to get everything lined up to it so that everything worked, so that the frogs of the switches, because these number 8 Atlas switches, the frogs, because the frog angle is very long, and a lot of locomotives, model locomotives, will stall or slow down on this because they'll break electrical contacts, so you have to power the frog, but the frog has to be powered in accordance with whichever way the track is lined. So the frog can be either polarity depending on which way the switch is lined. So, and this being a double crossover was quite a bit of wiring. You don't see underneath here, but you'll see this. There's a lot of wiring that it took to get this ironed out. And I got that done. And now that opens up where to go from here. Now I can operate trains. That's what the whole model railroad is about. And I know a lot of folks have been looking forward to seeing trains all the way run around the layout, and I hope that someday in the near future, those of you in the local area, I can have you over and we can run some trains and have some fun with it. But now the good thing about it now is it opens up all kinds of things I can do, and that's one of the things I like about model railroading, is that you go through the thing in stages, and then you open up possibilities of various things that you can do. You can hop back and forth, so you don't get stuck doing one thing for a long period of time, and you can work on this today and something else tomorrow. And among the things I'm going to do, and this is going to sound a little funny, but one of the things that we do in model railroading is we paint our track. Okay, paint the rails of the track, and you notice, you can probably see here that the rails look very silvery. And that's normal for well-used rails on the top surface of the rail. But as you'll see in this graphic I'm going to put in, real railroad track, the side of the rail gets dirty. Okay, I mean it's a dirty business, and the rail is actually made to form its own protective coating by its rust. It's a type of steel that rust actually protects it, forms a skin on it. And as you'll see in these images, heavily used track. The rail is basically a grimy, slightly brownish looking dark gray color, and there are paint manufacturers like Badger that makes an acrylic, and that this is called railroad tie brown, and it's a brown that looks almost, has a heavy influence of charcoal in it, and that would be used on the mainline tracks. And then when you get on the yard tracks, and there's going to be a yard in here, as there is in Warrenville, more of rust is exposed on the track, so you don't have quite as much grease and gunk on it, and so you go more for a rusty color. So you're going to be painting the sides of the rail. Obviously, this is a rail that is 83/100ths of an inch high. So you say, how are you going to paint the side of the rail? Well, there's a variety of ways to do it. And one of the things I'm going to show you here is I've got a device that is called Rusty Rails Painter. Essentially, it's a bottle, and you put some whatever color acrylic paint you're going to use in it, and at the end there's this little tube and a roller with a sponge on it. Think of it like a really mini paint roller, and as you turn it over and the paint travels down the tube and you roll the sponge along the edge of the rail, it neatly paints the edge of the rail. Now I'm going to try this. This has got some good reviews. Another thing you can do is acrylic paint markers, and these are good for touch-up areas, and I have a number of colors for this that I'll use. And then something I thought I'm going to try here, I kind of had a brainstorm. I got 120 of these 1-inch foam brushes for $10 from Amazon. And I thought, to follow this idea now, I actually cut them into like a wedge point, so like just a 1/4 inch or so of the point at this end, and cut an angle in it, and then dip this in. I've been experimenting with it, and just running this along the rail turns out to be a very good way to paint the edge rail rather than using a brush, and you can go fairly quickly as you can with these other two. And that's going to be my one way of painting it. Now, if you excuse me just a second, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get something that I got to also experiment with painting the track, and I meant to bring it over, and this is something that's rather new they came up with, and it is a portable airbrush that basically is charged by plugging into a USB cable, and the compressor and tank are in this bottle, and it gets charged, plug it in USB at the bottom, and the airbrush screws on here. I don't have it charged at the moment, but screw on the airbrush, and then screw it on like this, and then the paint cup screws in here, and with your USB charge, take the protective cover off. I'll leave it on for now. With the USB charge, you can go along, and this is, you can hear it. That's the compressor running. You can hear it right here. That's the compressor running. You can actually adjust this to a very fine spray, and it's a double action, so you push down, it increases the airflow, you pull back, it increases the paint flow. So it's double action. Amazon. It was about, it wasn't cheap, it was about $45. Got a good rating on this one, and I'm going to give that a shot too, but that'll come in handy for all kinds of airbrushing work where you don't want to start up the compressor. And I do have a paint hood in there and a couple compressors, and you know, I can really go to town airbrushing. Now, one of the things you have to do here with paint, and I have to set up something here for you, is mixing up the paint. Acrylic paint is very, very sensitive to being stirred. Okay, you have to keep it well stirred. And one of the things I do, as I mentioned previously, is I put stainless steel ball bearings in the bottom of the bottles to help agitate the paint. And for a long time I've been using, in fact this is the second one I've had, I've been using a Robart paint shaker, and that's this right here. And they cost about 30 bucks, and they're okay, but they got one problem. The cradle, the shaft for the cradle that holds the paint, is plastic and subject to fatigue. And this is the second one where the cradle's broken off. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I gotta pay 30 more bucks to get one of these because he's a plastic shaft? And I looked at the inside of it, and I said, wait a minute, I can make a more rugged paint shaker than that. So I went to Amazon and I looked around, and I spent about 30 bucks what it cost for a new paint shaker, and I bought a heavy duty DC 12 volt DC gear motor with a gear head on it. Got some brass strip out of my scrap box, a couple brass angles I used to make a cradle for the paint, some parts from an RC supply, RC race cars, D shaft and bearings and set screws and stuff to make everything attached to it, and a motor control. And for about 30 bucks I made a paint shaker that is really rugged, and I'll show you how it works here. You basically just put the paint in here and secure it with rubber bands around these hooks, and then turn on the paint shaker, and there's Cal's Super Atomic Paint Shaker. And this is much more sturdy than the Robart. No offense, Robart, but this thing should really work for a long time. And it does a really good job shaking the paint, and it can run for a long time. The Robart can only be used intermittently. This thing can run without getting warm for minutes on end, hours on end probably. And you can see it has a really good agitation to the paint. And this is my home-built paint shaker. Now, if anybody is in the hobby or in a hobby where you're using acrylic paints and you want to build your own paint shaker, let me know and I'll send you the list of parts with the Amazon links where to get it. Various uses metric screws, and you can build your own. And I'll even help you, show you pictures of the design, how it's put together. Finally, the last thing I'm doing here is, I said, Karlsbad is the major town on the layout. And this is Karlsbad is going to have a 4-track classification yard, and about a dozen to 15 industries. We're going to basically pick up cars, set out cars for shipments, and going around there's going to be an intermodal terminal over here for double stack intermodal cars, container cars, plus a terminal for auto racks. In here is going to be a diesel locomotive servicing facility, and I showed you in the past the diesel house that I built is going to go in there. There's going to have sanding towers and fueling facility. There will be a grain elevator or produce terminal along here. Either this location, a number of warehouses, and around the corner up there as it exits town, there will be a cement plant, scrap yard, and a few other things. And then on this side, on the fascia side of the layout, because again, I want to show that there's a world on this side of the railroad tracks too. There are going to be just a suggestion of industries along here, loading platforms and maybe some just stand-up flats just to provide a scenic break. So, in addition to all this, I've got a pretty good idea on all the track layout here in Karlsbad. This is something I'm going to turn to at various times, make progress on it, come and go on it, and work on this. In addition, I'm going to also be experimenting with scenery techniques and making scenic landforms, and that's gonna keep me occupied too. So I'm going to bounce back and forth. So in future episodes, we may have an episode on one thing and then an episode on another, so the things will be hopping around. You'll see progress on various things, including building a lot of structures. I have a lot of structure kits I've saved up with. You can see the boxes along here. I've been fiddling with looking at how they would work at various places, and giving that a lot of thought too. So with that, happy to show you that the railroad is running, and I know a lot of folks, as I said, have been waiting to see that. And from this point on, going to enjoy the model railroad. Hope you all have a great summer. Stay cool, stay healthy, and get your vaccinations.